Welcome to The Scoop from the Lurie Cancer Center's Adolescent and Young Adult, or AYA Cancer Program. We bring together AYA cancer survivors and experts to answer important AYA cancer-related questions. We hope you enjoy the conversation today. Hello, everyone, and welcome to The Scoop. We really appreciate you being here with us today. Today, we're talking all about navigating cancer and college, and so we're going to get started with a few introductions. I will start. My name is Bryn Fowler, and I'm the Adolescent and Young Adult Program Coordinator at both Lurie Children's Hospital and Northwestern in Chicago. Mohammed, do you want to go next?
Yeah, sure. So my name is Mohammed Kadiri. I'm a sophomore at the U of I. I'm also an AYA cancer survivor. Kind of the short bit about me.
Yeah, and Mohammed is part of our AYA Advisory Council as well, and we really value his participation in that. Michele?
Yeah, thank you so much, Bryn. My name is Michele Rosenthal. I'm so happy to be here. I currently serve as the Director of Academic Advising and Learner Success for the College of Professional Studies at Northeastern University. I've been in higher education for many years, both in student and academic affairs roles. And through that time, I've been privileged to work with so many young adults, many who have been diagnosed with cancer. And I created this college and cancer resource role a number of years ago based on many students that I've been privileged to work with. So I'm so happy to be here to share what I know about navigating college and cancer with Mohammed. So thank you so much, Bryn. Thank you so much, Mohammed, and to all of you for having me.
Yeah, we're so happy to have you, Michele. And Michele is being very humble, but she is truly an expert on this topic, and not many people are. So we're really lucky to have her with us here today. So to kind of get us started, let's maybe think about what goes into the admission process and everything that happens before you're actually on campus at college. So Michele, an initial question that I have for you would be, what things should AYAs, whether they're still actively going through treatment or they are a cancer survivor, but what should they be looking for in a college to find a good fit?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for the question, Bryn. And, for many adolescents and young adults who've been diagnosed with cancer, it's obviously the last thing that they expected, especially for those that are, kind of getting ready or in that application process and then a diagnosis. Or maybe you're in college already and then a diagnosis. And I think of the things that are most important for anyone as they start to explore the college landscape is fit. Right? It's about academic programs. It's about comfort. It's about small campus or large campus. It's about college or university. It's about finding the place that you think you will be happiest, most successful, really learn and really grow. I think for an adolescent or young adult diagnosed again with cancer, of the most important things, in addition to all of that kind of finding your fit, is finding a person and finding persons and finding an office. And I'll talk more about that later, who understands and can provide the kind of support that's necessary. I'm going to turn it over to Mohammed a bit to ask for what the kinds of things that you looked for through your journey, Mohammed.
Yeah, so there was definitely a lot I took into consideration. And I think it's really going to depend person to person. I know with me, I was in the last year of my treatment and maintenance. So, I was kind of looking for an opportunity to be a bit more independent. So I was looking for a campus that was far enough from home to where, I could be independent in that sense, but also a place that was close enough to where, I could go home if I needed to, for whatever weekend. So that's definitely something to consider. Other than that, a lot of the points you mentioned too, Michele, just with trying to find a place where you feel comfortable, where the atmosphere of the school, feels good academically, what programs does the school offer, and what sort of opportunities may be present.
Yeah. Thank you, Mohammed. I've been in higher education for a number of years. I basically went to college, became an RA, and never left. And I will never regret that decision. And part of the reason that I've never left is because I have wonderful colleagues, both staff colleagues and faculty colleagues who are there at respective college and universities. I've worked at many in the Mid-Atlantic and Northeastern regions of the United States, folks that really care and that are committed. And that might be folks within the Dean of Students office. That might be individuals within our disability services and support. And folks are busy, and offices can be small and understaffed, and being able to get to know those folks on, for example, a college visit, to be able to tell your story as a young adult who's been diagnosed, to start the process of advocacy, and to really listen to what you're hearing about what that university and that college offers, to make sure that you're making a choice that will really meet your needs as you experience, as Mohammed noted, continued treatment, new treatment, whatever, again, that treatment plan might be based on diagnosis, to make sure that that college or university will provide the kind of support that you need. And I'll talk more about that in a little bit.
So that actually segues pretty well into our next question here, Michele. So I know you kind of touched on it, but what are some, aspects of university that an AYA should kind of see, or maybe some people they should talk to and get to know when doing a college visit, which, we know is pretty important, in everyone's sort of process and making a decision as to where they want to go.
Yeah, thank you, Mohammed. It's so important. I definitely encourage you to visit. And I say that, and hopefully we're at the tail end of this pandemic where admissions tours will happen again and presentations will happen again. Even if they don't immediately, or maybe you're in that process now, I think colleges and universities have done an amazing job. Higher education doesn't always move quickly, but I have to say, I think it's moved pretty quickly through the pandemic to really provide the kinds of accommodations and resources that students need. So definitely visit if you can. If you be there to be part of a college tour, to attend a presentation. And again, if not in person, many colleges and universities are doing that virtually. And some of it really comes down to feel like, gosh, can I really see myself here? Many colleges and universities offer opportunities to maybe stay overnight. Again, now that's somewhat in transition. I think if that's an opportunity, I would definitely encourage it. If you're in a place where you feel like you can do that, just to, again, like, can I really see myself in this environment? Many colleges and universities also offer opportunities to sit in on a class. Like, absolutely do that if you can. Can I see myself here? How do I feel about this professor, this member of the faculty? Can I imagine myself on this campus in this program? So kind of the best, you pick and choose. I wouldn't say 20 visits. I'm not even sure I'd say 10, but maybe 5, where you can kind of pick and choose and compare based on feel, kind of look, academic programs, and whether you think that that's a place where you feel like you can be accommodated appropriately.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, those are such good practical tips. What are your thoughts when doing things like writing your college admissions essay? Is your cancer experience something that you recommend people disclose or include, or what kind of tips do you have for navigating the application and essay process?
Yeah, thank you, Brett. It's a great question. And I will say cancer diagnosis is part of your identity. It's not your full identity. Mm-hmm. Your identity. And I don't say that to minimize a diagnosis and to minimize at all the reality of how life-changing that can be. I get asked that question a lot. And a number of years ago, I actually reached out to a number of my colleagues in offices of admissions. Sometimes these offices are called enrollment management, to ask that question. And I want to read, if I can, just a couple of responses that my colleagues shared about just this question of college essay. So just give me a moment. I've picked a few. So this is from a former director of admissions at a 4-year liberal arts college. And the question I asked is, I don't want anyone to feel sorry for me, but I have learned so much about myself through this diagnosis, and I want to tell my story. How should I tell it? In preparation for writing an admissions application. And this colleague says, when meeting a prospective student through either personal essay or interview, I am most convinced by those students who can talk about personal issues, health, poverty, abuse, in ways that recognize the difficulties in dealing with hardship without defining themselves as victims. They tend to acknowledge the past and perhaps the present as part of their history, and within that, describe their plans for the future. For me, the acceptance often seems to spawn a resilience that returns or carries the student forward on a successful path to college life and beyond. Another colleague, who's vice president of admissions and enrollment at a 4-year business college, said, "This is a great question. And from my perspective, I think that the admissions essay provides an exceptional opportunity for students to be able to talk about perspectives, obstacles, determination, challenges, resolve, and so much more. I always tell our applicants that the personal statement is a way for us to learn more about the unique aspects of their lives. They should not feel that telling their story would be viewed negatively in the college process." And I just want to restate that. They should not feel that telling their story would be viewed negatively in the college process. How they frame the statement is important. It's a significant part of their life's journey to this point. I'm sure none of them would want to define themselves or future opportunities by their cancer, but we'd all be foolish to think that having cancer won't be with them forever. Telling their story through their lessons learned, obstacles overcome, or even continued challenges on an ongoing basis will help us to better know them as individuals, which I've always argued is the entire point of a college essay. This is from a senior vice president of students and enrollment at a 4-year research university. As with most things in the admissions process, there is no across-the-board answer to the question. There is certainly no reason to avoid the subject, but one committee reviewer might find this a compelling issue, another might not. By and large, this is not about asking anyone to feel sorry for an applicant, but about demonstrating that the student has shown perseverance. No university is going to admit a student because he or she has had cancer. The grades and scores still need to be there, but nearly all institutions weigh the challenges a student faces in order to reach those achievements. If a student has a period where grades suffer, it is often important to explain these in the context of life events. This is most effective where the applicant is able to demonstrate improvement. So with all of those answers, I hear some pretty significant themes: perseverance, resilience. It's not the full story. It's fine to share as part of your full story. And as I've talked with many students through the years and many students I'm working with currently, sometimes it can be really difficult to juggle, but often through conversation, we'll find an example that speaks to the why behind the application. And for many students, it speaks to the why behind the academic program that they're choosing. And I'm going to point to Mohammed because I think in some ways that's true for you.
It is very much so. So I am actually a pre-med student. I'm majoring in molecular and cellular biology. I always kind of knew that I wanted to do something in the field of medicine, even in the field of oncology. But, I didn't really have an idea of what that would look like until I was diagnosed. And, I guess since we're talking about college essays, I found it amazing that, I was listening to all those quotes, Michelle, and I was just thinking to myself, that was kind of the exact train of thought that I had. I didn't want my cancer diagnosis to define me. I didn't want, to be treated any differently, but I wanted to show that that experience was something that, I learned a lot from and that I almost used to generate a lot of positivity and growth from. And I think a college essay, depending on how you look at it, is really the perfect opportunity to show that. So that's something I would definitely recommend. AYs to keep in mind is that, this diagnosis doesn't define you, but it's an opportunity for growth. And if you can kind of use your diagnosis and portray it as that in a college essay, colleges are going to really learn to appreciate that.
Thank you, Mohammed. And, again, as I continue to be privileged to have this opportunity to work with young adults who have been diagnosed, I just continue to be impressed by kind of the passion and the motivation. And many will say, pardon my language, but just like, screw this. I just really want to move forward. Like, I just really want to move forward. And I'm so inspired by this population, like incredibly inspired. And there are just so many stories of incredible resilience, incredible perseverance. I think about students that I've been privileged to work with at colleges and universities that I've been part of. And a most recent situation of an honors student who, was going to a hospital in Boston every week for her treatment. She didn't, even through a hospitalization, did not skip a beat, graduated on time with honors, is now doing incredible work. I often refer to Samantha Eisenstein, who was a student at Brandeis University when I had the privilege to serve as an associate dean there. And I met Sam during her treatment. I had the privilege again of serving as her advisor. She has since started the SAM Fund, which is Surviving and Moving Forward. Her organization has raised millions of dollars for young adults to help them pay their bills. And as I think about Sam as a model, and again, she really is the inspiration, continues to be the inspiration for my work. Through her treatment, she had this idea, and it was really about giving back and helping others. And that's very much part of the story that Mohammed has shared. So again, there's so much to say. And I think as my admissions colleagues and enrollment colleagues have said, nothing to be embarrassed about, but to think about this as, this is something that has happened. I want to move forward. How will I do that? And why will your university or college benefit from having me as part of your community?
All very important things to consider, Michele. Thank you. You were talking about kind of the financial side of things, especially for AYAs. That's so relevant. And this is going to be a question, I think, for really any college student, most certainly AYAs included. Do you have any sort of advice or tips that you can give for navigating, the financial aid process, or available scholarships, or, if not, do you have anyone that you could potentially refer us to?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So I think, of the many offices on your list, right, the many folks that you will want to meet with through tours or after acceptance, the many offices that you will want to connect with, one of those is Student Financial Services. And I can tell you that colleges and universities have similar resources. They all have different names. It might be Student Financial Services. It might be the Financial Aid Office. So it varies. But I would say to reach out quickly to find out and ask questions about merit scholarship. Some of this will apply to your background and your personal circumstance. But I would say first and foremost, as you're making these decisions, definitely reach out to the Office of Financial Aid, Student Financial Services, whatever it might be within that college or university community.
Yeah. I will also add here that there are many organizations that offer scholarships specifically to cancer survivors. And we try to comb through those organizations and when their scholarships open and include those in the monthly newsletters that we send out. So for anyone listening who maybe is not signed up for our newsletter, I would encourage you to do that, because that's where you'll find up-to-date information on the scholarships that we are aware of. But thank you. That's really helpful.
Thank you.
Now maybe let's transition a little bit into thinking past the admissions process to once you're on campus. This is a loaded question, but Michele, can you tell us a little bit about some of the accommodations that are available to AYAs both on and off treatment, and what kind of the process of getting those is?
Yes, absolutely. And I'm going to kind of answer as before, during, and after. So I mentioned before, when you're doing these tours and kind of referenced, and I quote Grey's Anatomy for those of you who may watch, and potentially Dan Shapiro, who's out there, who's a faculty member, I think at a school in Pennsylvania, who helped write the scripts for a period of time. But finding your person, finding your persons, finding the right office. And a significant office is the Office of Disability Services and Support. That's another office that might have a very different name. You can often contact the Dean of Students office to find out, who do I talk with about disability accommodations? And I find, hearkening back to my comments before, many young adults who have been diagnosed, high achieving, again, like never asked for support before, never asked for support, never thought about asking for support. Things generally were going well in high school, middle school. And all of a sudden there's a time that like I need to reach out to an office to get some help and support. The young adults, again, that I've been privileged to work with often hesitate to do that. I encourage you not to hesitate. Of the things that I hope you remember from this presentation is oftentimes you really need to be your own advocate and continue to bring your story and your voice forward. And one of those key offices is the Office of, again, Disability Services and Support, the Office of Disability Accommodations. Really, really important. I would say, like, once that acceptance happens, that's the first office that you should be talking with about possible accommodations. Because of chemo brain, for example, you might have some difficulty remembering, might need extended time on an exam, might need a no distraction, testing environment, might need, if you're still in treatment, might not want to live with a roommate because of concern of the after effect of chemo, might want to live in a suite environment, might need transportation or help navigating campus if you're choosing to live on campus. So the Office of Disability Services, again, just depending on the name, is the place where all of those accommodations are provided. It's important to note that accommodations are not retroactive. So everything needs to be planned up front. You might receive accommodations and choose not to use them, but they absolutely need to be in place before, right? Absolutely need to be in place before. Processes vary, but generally most colleges and universities, once you'd be asked for all of your medical documentation that would go to a person within that office. All of that would be reviewed. For those of you in high school that currently have an IEP, for example, the IEP, it does not automatically transfer to a college or university environment. It's different. The kinds of accommodations will be different, again, in a college or university environment. So all of the documentation would be received, it would be reviewed, and what would happen in most colleges and universities, once classes begin or before, you would receive letters, and those letters would be for you to give to your faculty. Know that your cancer diagnosis would not be part of the letter. All the letter would say is that you are entitled to accommodations, and again, the accommodations would be listed. It might be low distraction testing. It might be extended time, for example. It might be that you need to sit in the front of the classroom, right, and not be in the back. Maybe there's a visual issue. Maybe, again, there's a distraction issue. So all of that would be part of the letter that you as the student would give to your faculty member. They would not ask you why. You may choose to tell them, because maybe they would be part of your network of kind of trusted individuals, trusted persons that you would want to talk with to share your diagnosis, but you are not obligated to do that confidential. And I would suggest the offices tend to be very, 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 very busy, as you would imagine, for a whole host of reasons. Accommodations on college and university campuses are incredibly common for physical disabilities, learning disabilities, medical disabilities. So I encourage you, I can't stress this enough, right after that acceptance, reach out to that office, start to work on getting those accommodations. Again, this is a key to advocating for yourself. So everything is in place. When you get to campus, everything is set. You'll have those letters and you can move forward. Mohammed, anything you might want to add to that based on your own experience?
Yeah. So if the listeners don't get anything out of this interview but one thing, I would say reach out to those resources. I mean, like I said, I was someone that was in my final year of treatment and I was in maintenance anyways. So I was feeling really good. Or I guess about as good as you can feel while still undergoing treatment. But, I, especially towards that last year in high school too, my senior year, I wasn't really using my accommodations just because I didn't really need to. So I was hesitant about reaching out actually. But eventually I kind of decided to do it. And I don't think there's anything that I can think of off the top of my head that I'm more thankful that I did. I like the whole process in and of itself was really easy. I think I had to complete like an online component, turn in some paperwork, and then I set up a meeting with a counselor. At the U of I, it's called DRES, at the DRES office. And, she looked at my paperwork asked me what accommodations I needed without looking at anything else. I told her which ones I prefer, and she just wrote them down and put them in, I guess, on file. And that's a really nice thing about these accommodations, is that they're very like personalized. So if there's an accommodation you feel you'll need, and you mention it, it'll be on there without a doubt. And if there's an accommodation that you feel you might not need as much, or, you just don't want, it doesn't have to go on there. You're not kind of constricted by anything. And the other thing that I would say is professors 99% of the time are going to be really, really accommodating and cool about just giving you whatever you need. I think literally every single professor that I sent my letter to told me, if there are any other accommodations that you need that aren't included here, please let me know, and I will make sure that you get those accommodations. That accommodation letter is definitely a start, but just know that, professors aren't going to view you any differently, and they're going to make sure that you have what you need to succeed in their classes.
Thank you, Mohammed. The other piece of I can add, Bryn, is kind of outside of some of the accommodations that Mohammed and I mentioned, and things can change, right? The cancer diagnosis and treatment can be a bit of a roller coaster. Having those accommodations in place might mean that at one point, you might request an academic underload or some kind of reduced course load, right? On how you're feeling and treatment. There might be academic allowances that are needed based on, again, diagnosis, treatment, how you're feeling. Generally, for most campuses, incompletes, for example, can be given if a student has completed most of their coursework, but maybe something has happened and there's an assignment or two left that a student needs to do. An incomplete can be requested by all students really at any time. So just knowing that those kinds of things are in place. And again, for a student with diagnosis, to know that at some point, even as Mohammed said, didn't necessarily need those accommodations at the beginning, but then there was a point that knew it was helpful because a circumstance changed. I before just campus resources, and I'd love to just kind of go through a few if that would be helpful. Bryn. Yeah. So, as I mentioned, kind of these people on campus, it might be if you're choosing to live in a residence hall, through your treatment, it might be, and again, different titles, different campuses, might be a quad director. It might be your head resident who basically runs that residence hall. It might be a residence coordinator or a director of residence life. It might be a class dean. It might be your academic advisor. Academic advisors are part of every campus community to help you navigate your classes, to help with course registration. And those are the folks that would probably be part of a discussion if at some point you decided you needed a reduced course load, or maybe you wanted to take an additional course just to give that a try. Being cognizant of drop deadlines to make sure that you were not penalized in any way for that drop, but your academic advisor, key resource. It might be a dean of studies. It might be a dean of the college. It might be an individual faculty member, as Mohammed mentioned earlier. Counseling services, enormously helpful. I trust that you will have a circle of friends, a college and university environment in the best of circumstances based on everything that goes on through this challenging time of your life as a young adult. So helpful to think about counseling services and support, all confidential, just to have a person in your corner that potentially you're talking with every week or maybe checking in with every other week. Financial services that I mentioned, the Office of the Registrar, key office, especially when academic exceptions need to be discussed, like, for example, or reduced course load. And then again, the Office of Disability Services and Support. So kind of key players in the support and services area. If you forget all of those and kind of all of those positions, please remember like Dean of Students Office or Student Services Office. That's office often like the front line that can get you to anyone and anyone that you might need.
It's really practical. Thank you, Michele.
Sure.
Yeah, all good points. So Michele, you talked about kind of building a network of people that you trust, and that had me thinking about the college experience, especially for an AYA. So I was going to ask you, how can an AYA make the most out of their college experience?
Yeah, thanks, Mohammed. I think do everything you can to make the most out of your college experience. College and universities are just like, full of clubs and organizations. You might have been part of student government, for example, in your high school experience. Exists on a college campus, apply, run for president. You might sing a cappella, you might be in theater, you might play a sport. Like it's really all there. And, I would say, as you're touring and meeting other students, again, kind of back to fit, but I would just encourage you to absolutely be involved. Absolutely be involved in the best way that you can. We are, again, in a virtual time now where students are taking classes online, and they're taking classes and they're also involved in clubs and organizations. So all of that is absolutely available to you. And again, you might not be able to fully involve yourself or fully engage, but that doesn't mean that you shouldn't reach out and make the connection. Meet other students. Forming a sense of community, getting to know others is an incredibly, incredibly part of the college process. I will also say that maybe the silver lining to this pandemic is college and universities are offering more online courses, hybrid courses, online and on ground. New nomenclature for us, on ground. Online that they've ever offered before. So you might be in a place where you think, oh gosh, I'm just not sure I'm feeling strong enough at this point to be in a college or university community. You can take classes online. And, those are all, again, accommodations. You would also talk with your enrollment and admissions office about how to make that happen. Your academic advisor would also be helpful there. But there are ways to engage now online that young adults several years ago, it really was not even an option. And now it's an option, but in ways that, we could have never predicted. But I would say that's been a silver lining to our COVID experience. Say a little bit about that.
Yeah. I definitely like that you mentioned being involved. And, it is very difficult sometimes, as an AYA, undergoing chemotherapy, it can be pretty hard to kind of muster up the energy, to go out and do things and meet people. But, I think with things moving virtually now, and hopefully soon we'll be back to in person to some extent. But, I think, things being virtual has honestly really helped. I know for me, it's helped. I kind of wasn't very involved my first year and a half or so on campus. I wasn't too sure what to get involved in, and taking that step was kind of hard. But, this past month, I joined a pre-med fraternity on campus, and it's got to be the best thing that I've ever done, to be honest with you. All of a sudden now I've got a whole network of people that I feel I can trust, which I know we talked about. It's an amazing family we have. They've been so welcoming, and it's just, helped me kind of figure out where my place on campus is. And it's helped me kind of almost build myself and learn more about myself. And I think, with so many different campuses, I know definitely at my school, it's a huge school, right? So it can feel overwhelming at times to figure out, where's my group of friends? Who am I going to be able to relate to the most? But with so many different student organizations on campus, it narrows it down big time. And you have the opportunity to kind of meet people that have similar interests as you. And then once you can build that personal connection, it helps to have other conversations and, really just make close friends.
Yeah. I would say, it's picking and choosing too, right? Not everyone needs to know about your cancer diagnosis. Some you will choose to share, some not. I work with many young adults who have told me, I had this amazing group of friends. My amazing group of friends have changed. Because some just don't get it and they don't understand and they don't know what to ask me. They don't know how to talk with me. And then I have others that are have been there with me right along the journey. So you'll pick and choose. And, same thing in terms of connections in your new college or university experience. Connect. You may choose to share. You may not choose to share. It's completely up to you. Part of your identity, not your full identity. Definitely make connections. It's incredibly, incredibly important just to really find a sense of community. And that's what you're entering, this wonderful new community, which will be with you for the rest of your life.
Yeah. Mohammed, I'm curious if you wanted to share a little bit about how you've navigated that as you're making new friends and them kind of coming in while you were finishing maintenance therapy, and what does that look like for you?
Yeah, so it was definitely a challenge at first because I was diagnosed when I was a sophomore in high school, and the people that I was friends with had known me before my diagnosis. So when I was diagnosed, it wasn't something that necessarily defined me in their eyes. But, all of a sudden when I went to college, I have a bunch of these people that don't know me. And I'm someone that's proud of the journey that I've been on, and I love talking about my diagnosis and talking about the experiences that I've been lucky enough to have because of it. But I just didn't know how to bring that up. I didn't know who to talk to about that or when to bring that up. And that's why I found student organizations to be so helpful, because I was able to share common ground with other students, and we were able to build close personal connections. And then once I got to know them and once I got to get a good feel of who they were, that's kind of when I brought up my diagnosis. And to be honest with you, this unfortunately isn't the reality for every AYA, but I'm lucky enough to say, I have little to no friends that sort of left me when I was diagnosed or learned about my diagnosis. And again, that's not everyone's reality, unfortunately, but it definitely helped me to kind of evaluate people first almost and build close personal connections with them first, so that they could, kind of have an identity of me in their eyes before I talked about my diagnosis.
Yeah.
So that's definitely something I'd recommend. I think that's a big reason as to why, trying to meet people and being involved as much as you can is really important.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's one of the great parts of college friendships, right? Is that there's no preconceived notions of who you are, and that people can just get to know you.
Exactly.
Yeah. No question.
Michele, you've talked a little bit about this in some of our other questions, but do you have other suggestions of how AYAs can advocate for themselves on campus? I mean, I think so much of this is you really have to take up that role as an advocate for yourself in seeking these different offices and meeting your people. But curious if you have any other suggestions around that.
Yeah, thanks, Bryn. I think that, we're like this, email culture now, right? Like everything, email, back and forth, email. I think where you can set up individual appointments, like, I'd really like to meet with you, and maybe now it's over Zoom, or maybe now it's over Teams, or whatever the technology might be. At some point soon, we'll be in person again. But I would say don't rely on these platforms. Don't rely on email. Emails lost, things get missed. It's a quick conversation. The person doesn't get to see you. They don't get to know you. So I would say that it's important to set up a meeting, and you might get a response, which might be, please send me an email. I'll be happy to get back to you, or please fill out this form. And of course, you'll respectfully fill out the form. And the response might be, be back in touch if you need. And this is a point of advocacy where you might say, absolutely. And it would be so helpful if we can just set up a 30-minute meeting. I would be absolutely surprised if you ever get a no to that question. You might not necessarily always get the invitation to do that. Certainly, your academic advisor, no question, you will. Certainly with individuals within a student's office or with a disability accommodations office, but and always work to just set that up so you can have an opportunity to tell your story. And I think part of the advocacy is really the opportunity to tell your story. You want to be remembered. You want your name to be remembered. You want your circumstance to be remembered. In part, right, you're being proactive that if you ever need something, you want that person to remember you. We all know that we're more easily remembered after we've had the opportunity to meet and to make a connection. So you really want to make that connection. You might, again, as an incoming student, be in classrooms of many students. Your professors, you will always have office hours. Go to office hours. Meet your faculty. And it doesn't necessarily mean meet your faculty to, you'll pick and choose who you want to share. And if you want to share, completely up to you. But I would say it's so important to get to know your instructors. Many students hesitate to do that. I continue to be surprised. And then they'll come back and say, Michele, it was great. I'm so happy to know this person. They were majored in the same major that I had, or they actually know someone, or they grew up in my hometown. There's so many opportunities to network and to make a connection faculty are really, really key. I actually have a quote that I can share. Just in preparation for a conversation with your professor, I reached out to, again, one of my faculty colleagues, and this is a tenured faculty and department chair of a 4-year research university. And this person says, the "what should I tell my professor" answer would depend on the student and the professor. My first advice is that the student goes to see the equivalent of an academic services office, their staff advisors who are precisely there to help with this kind of situation, to help the student decide what kind of accommodations might be needed and how best to communicate with the faculty involved. Sometimes the academic services, academic advising staff, counselor will be the one to communicate with the professors. This can be a vague or detailed message, and that's what I was talking about earlier with the letters that you will receive. Or sometimes the staff counselor advisor will recommend that the students speak directly with the professor. Most professors, and this is important, will be much more familiar with cancer and less shocked by a cancer diagnosis than the student. So I think students can be reassured that professors will respect and understand the student and his or her situation, and also not dramatically change his or her sense of the student's identity, right? Ideally, the conversation happens very, very naturally. You have a connection, and then you move on, and you're the student that you are on that wonderful campus with another person in your corner who maybe knows your story if you've chosen to share it, or maybe not.
That's great. This conversation has been so helpful, and I have learned so much. Just before we finish, Michele or Mohammed, is there any other tidbits that you think would be important for folks to know?
I think the last thing that I would share, and it touches on some points that I've made already, but just want to really stress the importance of creating your network. Again, professors, Office of Disability Services, the Director of Health Services, a member of the counseling office, your academic advisor, resources from student services. Definitely be choosy, right? So again, good people in positions for all the right reasons, but be choosy, because you might meet someone and you know what, it just wasn't a great connection. That's okay. Find the next person. Be choosy, because part of advocacy, right? It's more helpful when you've made a connection and you know that it's the right fit, and you'll find those people. It might take a little time. Again, good people who want to be helpful. Be choosy, reach out, advocate, and do everything you can to find your network. And maybe it's just 4 or 5 people, professionals, faculty members on that campus. And then, as Mohammed noted earlier, just a really wonderful group of friends who are there for you, who are there to support you, who get it. So you can and just make the most of your academic journey. You have every reason to have a wonderful academic journey. And, that's why the campus is there. That's why the research is there. So advocate, but also be choosy to figure out who those people are in your network that are trusted, that you feel like that you will feel like you can really, really lean on.
Yeah, I think that's really important. Mohammed, thank you so much for your willingness to share your experience and your story with us. It's really helpful to hear it through your lived experience. And Michele, thank you for sharing all of your expertise and years of doing this in your day-to-day with us. It's been so helpful for me, and I hope helpful for others as well. So thank you both again. Thank you so much for joining us today on The Scoop. We hope you enjoyed our conversation and learned something new. If you want to hear more of these in the future, make sure you like our page at Lurie AYA. We hope you have a happy day.